Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. What would you do if a nearby HOA tried to control what you build on land you own and they don't even touch? The county started delaying my driveway permit because of complaints, and I couldn't figure out why until I checked 1 week of trail cam footage. And what I saw explained everything. I never wanted to be the kind of person who gets into disputes with neighbors. My wife and I bought our property about 3 years ago. 23 acres of beautiful wooded land with a small clearing where we eventually plan to build our dream home. It's in a rural part of the county, the kind of place where you can actually see stars at night and hear nothing but wind through the trees and the occasional coyote. We both work in the city about 40 minutes away, but we'd always talked about raising a family somewhere with space and quiet. When we bought the place, access was via an old gravel road that cuts through our property from the county highway. The previous owner had used it mainly for accessing a hunting cabin that's still standing in the back corner of the lot. It's not much of a road, honestly. Just 2 tire tracks with grass growing up the middle in places, but it's on our deed and it's entirely on our property. The county highway department maintains the paved road, but our gravel road is 100% private property. For the first couple of years, we didn't do much with the land. We'd come out on weekends, camp sometimes, talk about house plans, enjoy the peace. My wife got pregnant last year, and suddenly our timeline accelerated. We weren't going to build the whole house right away, but we definitely needed proper access to the property. Something better than a rutted gravel path that turns into a mud pit every time it rains. I started keeping copies of everything around this time. Every email, every letter, every inspection report. My wife said I was being paranoid, but it turned out to be smart. I started the permit process about 6 months before our baby was due. We hired a local engineering firm to draw up the plans for a proper driveway. Nothing fancy, just a solid gravel base, proper drainage, culverts where needed, the works. The kind of driveway that would handle emergency vehicles if we ever needed them, and that wouldn't wash out every spring. Our property is pretty isolated. The nearest structure is about half a mile away, a development called The Estates. Despite the pretentious name, it's just a collection of oversized houses on undersized lots, the kind of place where the HOA regulates what color you can paint your mailbox. When we bought our land, the realtor mentioned the estates, but said they had nothing to do with our property. Different parcels, different ownership, no shared boundaries. We weren't part of their HOA and never would be. The permit application process should have been straightforward. Our engineer said 6 weeks, maybe 8 at the outside. The county's land development office confirmed they'd received everything and it looked complete. 6 weeks came and went. No permit. I called to check on the status. The clerk sounded apologetic and said there had been some complaints filed and they needed to review them before moving forward. Complaints? About what? Our property is ours. We're not in any HOA, we're not violating any ordinances. She couldn't give me details over the phone, but suggested I come in. So I took an afternoon off work and drove to the county offices. That's when I learned that the complaints were coming from residents in the estates. Multiple complaints, actually. They claimed our planned driveway would cause environmental damage, increase erosion, affect their property values, and constitute overdevelopment of rural land. I was baffled. Our property doesn't even touch theirs. How could our driveway on our land affect them? The clerk didn't have good answers, but said the county had to investigate all complaints. She assured me it was just a matter of paperwork. Another month passed. Still no permit. The complaints kept coming. Someone was calling every few days reporting that we were working without permits, which we weren't because we didn't have permits yet because they kept complaining. It was circular and maddening. My wife was 7 months pregnant by this point and getting increasingly anxious about access. Our midwife had already expressed concern about the condition of the current road. If there were complications, if we needed an ambulance, that rutted gravel path wasn't going to cut it. I escalated things with the county. I spoke to a supervisor, then their supervisor. My wife was getting frustrated and actually called our county commissioner's office to complain about the harassment. I think that call helped because suddenly I got a meeting with someone in the county administrator's office. The administrator was professional but clearly tired of the situation. He reviewed our application, reviewed the complaints, and asked me a direct question. "Do you know anyone in the estate's HOA?" I didn't. I'd never even met anyone from there. He nodded and said he'd look into it personally. 2 weeks later, we finally got our permit approved, nearly 5 months after we'd first applied. The administrator called me himself to apologize for the delay and assure me that our application had always been in order. The complaints had been investigated and found to be without merit. We immediately scheduled our contractor to start work. We were cutting it close. My wife was due in 6 weeks. Work started on a Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, the county inspector showed up. Someone had called in a complaint. Again. The inspector checked our paperwork, confirmed everything was in order, and left. He seemed annoyed and not at us. Tuesday morning, the inspector was back. Another complaint. He didn't even get out of his truck this time, just waved at our contractor and drove off. Wednesday, same thing. Thursday, the inspector called our contractor directly and told him to just keep working. He wasn't going to keep responding to nuisance complaints. By Friday, I was fed up. I called the county administrator's office again and asked who was filing these complaints. They couldn't tell me specific names, but confirmed they were all coming from the estates. That weekend, I did something I probably should have done months earlier. I took a drive around the estates to see what we were dealing with. It's one of those developments with a grand entrance, stone pillars, a wrought iron sign, landscaping that requires way too much water for our climate. The houses are those modern farmhouse-style things that look like someone took a barn and added too many windows. But here's what I noticed. Their main entrance comes from a different county road than ours, one that requires going several miles out of the way if you're coming from town. However, if you were coming from town and wanted to reach the back section of the estates where most of the houses are, you could cut through using our road, which connects to a dirt track that runs along the edge of their development. I drove back to our property and really looked at our gravel road for the first time with fresh eyes. There were a lot of tire tracks, way more than my wife and I had made. I'd always assumed the previous owner came out more than we did, or maybe there was some hunting traffic, but now I was suspicious. I actually had a trail camera I'd been using to watch for deer, so I repositioned it to point at the road and let it run for a week. The footage was eye-opening. I counted over 40 distinct vehicles using our road in that week. They'd come from the county highway, drive down our private road, and then cut through to the estates. Residents of the estates had been using our road as their personal shortcut for years, and we'd never noticed because we weren't there that often. This explained everything. They weren't worried about environmental damage or erosion or property values. They were worried we'd block their shortcut. I called our lawyer, the same real estate attorney who'd handled our property purchase. I explained the situation and sent her the trail camera footage. She called me back the next day and she was not pleased on our behalf. She explained that what the estate's residents were doing was trespassing. Our road is on our deed, on our property, and we have every right to control access to it. The fact that they'd been using it didn't give them any legal right to continue. Our lawyer explained that in our state, you can sometimes acquire a legal easement through long-term continuous use of someone else's property, but it requires specific conditions and typically at least 15 years. The estate's development was only 8 years old, so they were nowhere close. Armed with this information, I decided to reach out directly to the estate's HOA. I figured maybe we could clear this up with a simple conversation. Their website listed a president, vice president, the usual HOA structure. I sent a polite email to the HOA president introducing myself and asking if we could discuss the concerns about our driveway project. His response was enlightening. He wrote something about how the estate's HOA had environmental standards for the entire area, and they couldn't allow destructive development near their community. He claimed our driveway would set a bad precedent. I wrote back more directly this time. I explained that our property is not part of the estates, not subject to their HOA, and that our fully permitted driveway was entirely legal. I also mentioned that I'd noticed a lot of traffic on our private road and was curious if he knew anything about that. His next email was more aggressive. He said that road had been used by estates residents for years as a community amenity, and we couldn't suddenly restrict access. He claimed it was an established route and that blocking it would be hostile and unreasonable. I forwarded the entire email chain to my lawyer. She was quiet for a moment after reading it, then said, "Well, he just made this very easy. Here's the thing about easements and property rights. Even if someone has been using your property, if you're not aware of it or haven't explicitly given permission, they're just trespassing." The HOA president had just admitted in writing that his residents had been using our private road without permission. There was no easement, no right-of-way agreement, nothing. My lawyer sent a formal letter to the HOA. It was polite but firm. It explained that our road is private property, that the HOA and its residents have no legal right to use it, and that continued use constitutes trespassing. The letter gave them 30 days' notice that we would be restricting access to our private road and suggested they make alternative arrangements. The response was not good. We got a letter back from the HOA's lawyer threatening all sorts of things. They'd file complaints with the county. They already had. They'd sue for access. They had no grounds. They'd even contact our contractor and warn him about working on disputed property. Our contractor told them where they could stick their warning. I talked it over with my wife. We'd been patient, we'd followed all the rules, we'd tried to be reasonable, and in return the HOA had harassed us for months, delayed our driveway project, and filed countless false complaints against us, all because they wanted to keep using our private property as their shortcut without even asking permission. Honestly, I wasn't sure if we were being petty. Part of me thought maybe we should just let it go. But my wife pointed out that they'd literally threatened to contact our contractor and tried to stop us from building a safe driveway before our son was born. She was right. We decided it was time for some malicious compliance. The 30-day deadline came. We checked with the county and confirmed we didn't need any special permits to gate our own private road. We installed a gate at the entrance to our road from the county highway. Not a flimsy chain across the drive, but a proper metal farm gate with a lock. We also had signs made that clearly stated, "Private road, no trespassing, property owner permission required." We installed the gate on a Sunday evening. By Monday morning, my phone was ringing. The HOA president, angry and demanding we remove the gate immediately. I politely declined. He threatened legal action. I told him to have his lawyer call my lawyer, then the calls started coming from individual residents. One woman left a voicemail explaining that she had a medical condition and needed quick access in case of emergency, and our gate was forcing her to take a longer route. I felt bad about that, genuinely. But our road is not a public emergency route. The Estates has its own entrance on a county road. That's what they should use. Another resident offered to pay us monthly for access. I actually considered this one, but our lawyer advised against it. Once you start accepting payment, you create a business relationship and potentially complicate your property rights. We declined. The complaints to the county resumed with a vengeance. Our contractor was getting visits from inspectors daily. But here's the thing. We had all our permits. Everything was legal. The inspectors would show up, check the paperwork, confirm we were in compliance, and leave. After about 2 weeks of this, the lead inspector pulled our contractor aside and told him the county was aware these were harassment complaints and they'd be documenting them. Our driveway was finished about 3 weeks before my wife's due date. It's a beautiful piece of work, smooth gravel, proper crown for drainage, new culvert installed, everything to code and then some. When the ambulance did have to come out, false alarm but still, the paramedics commented on what a nice approach we had. Our son was born healthy and perfect, and we spent those first few weeks in a fog of diaper changes and 3 a.m. feedings and not thinking much about the estates or their HOA. But apparently they were thinking about us. Specifically, they were dealing with a lot of angry residents who were now forced to use the actual entrance to their development, which added about 8 minutes to the drive from town. 8 minutes doesn't sound like much, but when you're doing it twice a day, every day, people notice. The HOA tried a few more tactics. They sent us a purchase offer for an easement through our property. It was insultingly low, basically enough to cover our legal fees and nothing more. We declined. They sent another offer, slightly higher. We declined again. Our lawyer advised us that once we started negotiating, we'd never hear the end of it. Then something interesting happened. The HOA meetings, which are technically public records, started showing increasing dissent. I know this because one of the residents who was actually sympathetic to our position started sending me the minutes. The HOA board had apparently never told the general membership that the community route through our property was actually someone else's private road that they had no right to use. They'd just let people assume it was an HOA road or an easement or something legitimate. When residents found out the truth, that their HOA had been facilitating trespassing on private property for years and had spent HOA funds fighting a property owner who was entirely within their rights, they were not happy. The HOA president who'd sent us all those aggressive emails, he was voted out at the next election. The new HOA board reached out with a much more conciliatory tone. They apologized for the previous board's actions and asked if we'd be willing to discuss reasonable options. I appreciated the change in tone, but the answer was still no. Our road is our road. We're not interested in having dozens of cars driving through our property every day. Eventually, they decided to form a committee to explore building their own proper access road to the back section of their development. This would require purchasing or obtaining easements through several properties, getting county approval, and actually constructing a real road. It was going to be expensive and time-consuming. According to my contact who sends me the meeting minutes, the initial estimate came in at around $400,000 to be funded through a special assessment on all homeowners. There was a lot of anger at those meetings, people demanding to know why the previous board had let them use an illegal route for years instead of building proper infrastructure. Arguments about who should pay what portion of the assessment, threats of lawsuits against the HOA itself. I don't take pleasure in their predicament exactly, but I don't feel guilty either. They created this situation by using our property without permission for years and then by actively trying to prevent us from improving our own land. If they'd approached us respectfully from the beginning, if they'd knocked on our door and said, "Hey, we know it's your road, but would you consider allowing access for a reasonable fee or under certain conditions?" maybe we could have worked something out. But they didn't do that. They tried to bully us through the permit process, filed false complaints, threatened our contractor, and sent us aggressive legal threats. They assumed they could keep using our property indefinitely just because they'd been getting away with it. As I'm writing this, our son is 6 months old. The gate is still there. We've had no issues with trespassing since we installed it. The HOA is apparently still working on their alternative access road, but it's gotten bogged down in easement negotiations with neighboring property owners who, having seen what happened with us, are driving very hard bargains. We're planning to start building our actual house next spring. The foundation permit is already approved, and this time it only took 6 weeks, right on schedule. No mysterious complaints, no delays. The new HOA board seems to have decided that fighting with neighbors is more trouble than it's worth. My wife jokes that we should send the estates a bill for all the years they used our road without permission. I think she's only half joking. Our lawyer says we technically could pursue a trespassing claim for damages, but it would be more hassle than it's worth, and we've already made our point. The other day I was driving home from work and took the turn onto the county highway that passes our property. Out of habit, I glanced toward the estate's main entrance. There was a line of cars waiting to turn in, evening rush hour, everyone coming home from work. That 8-minute detour adds up when you've got 40 or 50 cars all trying to get home. They could have had that shortcut if they'd just asked nicely, if they'd been good neighbors instead of entitled bullies. But they made their choice, and now they get to live with it. Sometimes I wonder if the previous property owner knew that estate's residents were using the road. He lived out of state and barely used the property, so maybe he genuinely didn't know. Or maybe he knew and didn't care because he wasn't there often enough for it to matter. Either way, it wasn't his problem to solve, it was ours. There's a small part of me that feels bad for the individual residents who weren't involved in the HOA's decisions. The woman with the medical condition, for instance, or the young families who just wanted a convenient route home. But the thing is, convenience doesn't create rights. They bought houses in a development with a certain infrastructure, and now they're learning that the extra access they'd been enjoying wasn't actually legitimate. Our gate has become something of a symbol. There's a local Facebook group for rural property owners in our county, and our story has made the rounds. Several other people have shared similar tales of HOAs or neighbors trying to claim rights to private roads or driveways. A few have even installed their own gates after hearing what happened to us. I've tried to be measured when telling the story. I don't name the estate specifically in online forums, and I've discouraged the more vengeful suggestions people have offered. This was never about revenge. It was about protecting our property rights and ensuring we could safely access our own land. But I'll admit there is a certain satisfaction in knowing that the HOA's attempt to prevent our driveway construction ended up costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars and a huge headache. They tried to block our gate and ended up having to build an entire new road. My son is growing fast. We're already talking about where to put the swing set when we build the house and whether we want chickens and all the things you think about when you're planning a life in the country. The driveway that caused so much trouble is just a driveway now. We use it every day without thinking about it. But that gate is staying, partly because we have every right to control access to our property, partly because removing it would send the wrong message. And partly, I'll admit, because every time I unlock it and drive through, I'm reminded that sometimes standing your ground is the right thing to do. The estates can build their own damn road. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Hey, my name is Ethan, and I work as a lead technician for a specialized industrial firm where we handle heavy machinery repairs. Because the parts we use are expensive and often custom ordered, our old system used to be simple. If we needed something, I would email my manager and say, "Hey, we need a $4,000 hydraulic seal." He would reply, "Approved," and I would order it. It was quick, efficient, and everyone was happy. Then Kevin entered the picture. Kevin was a new efficiency consultant turned director of operations. Apparently, Kevin thought email was for lazy people. To curb unauthorized spending, he decided that every single requisition, regardless of cost, now required a physical ink-on-paper signature on a specific Form 402, which had to be hand-delivered to his office. I told Kevin this was a bad idea because we are a high-volume shop. On a busy Monday, I might order 40 different items, ranging from $5 bolts to $10,000 engines. Kevin's response was, "If it is not signed by me in person, the company is not paying for it. No exceptions. I do not care if it is a nickel or a grand. I want to see every request that crosses your desk." That was when I realized Kevin did not quite understand what every request actually meant. Normally, I batch my orders together or handle small items like washers, lubricants, and safety goggles through a general shop fund. But not anymore. Monday morning came, and instead of batching everything into one list, I treated every single individual component as its own requisition. Need 10 specific bolts? That was one form. Need a bottle of degreaser? That was another form. Need a replacement light bulb for the break room? Form. By 10 in the morning, I had a stack of 64 individual forms. I walked into Kevin's office while he was on a conference call. I waited until he hung up, then placed the stack on his desk. Kevin looked at it and said, "What is this?" I said, "The requisitions for the morning. You said you wanted to see every request. I need these signed so I can get the shop running." It took him 20 minutes to sign them all because he insisted on reading each one. By the time he finished, I was back with 15 more. By Tuesday, he was visibly annoyed. By Wednesday, the fallout began. Because I was spending half my day walking back and forth to Kevin's office and waiting for him to finish meetings so I could get signatures, the actual repair work slowed to a crawl. 3 major clients called to ask why their machines were not ready. The breaking point came during an emergency overnight job. A local plant had a massive failure, and we needed a $12 O-ring to fix a $200,000 pump. It was around 4:45 in the afternoon, and Kevin had already left for a networking dinner. Under the old rules, I would have just bought the part and gotten reimbursed, but under Kevin's no exceptions rule, I could not. So I told the client, "I am sorry, but I do not have authorization to purchase the part until it is physically signed off by the director." The client was furious and called the chief executive officer. The chief executive officer called Kevin at his dinner. Kevin told him he would handle it in the morning. The chief executive officer told Kevin to get himself back to the office immediately. So Kevin had to drive 45 minutes back to the office, still in his suit, just to sign a single piece of paper for a $12 part. The next morning, a company-wide memo went out. Digital approvals via email are reinstated for all items under $5,000. Kevin does not look at me anymore when I walk past his office. I still make sure to bring him a physical form for anything over $5,001, and I always make sure to wait until he is right in the middle of a very important lunch. After all, he wanted to see every request. The next one is an entitled people story. A while back was senior prom for my son and daughter. Myself, my husband, parents of sons, girlfriend, and mother of daughter's boyfriend all pitched in and rented the 2 couples their limo to bring them to prom. The 4 had plans to go together in the same limo, and we, the parents, supported that idea. At school the week before prom, my son said at dinner that day his former football teammate asked if he'd mind if my son shares a limo with him and his date because teammates help each other. My son politely said that he already has a limo ride planned for himself along with his girlfriend, sister, and sister's boyfriend. They don't want to plan a big ride for a lot of people, and their ride is already covered to just take them. The former teammate then tells my son he needs to make room for him and his date, which again, my son says that's not going to fit plans that have already been made. Edit. 2 days later in my morning cycling class at gym, I work for one of the people who attend the class approaches me before class begins and says she's the mom of the teammate my son declined to help. I know who she is from the football season of being at the games. I told her that my kids have already made their plan for their ride to prom and that it's already paid for the time that they'll need the limo. The woman then says her son is a former teammate and he deserves to ride with them. I told her her son should have thought ahead and made better arrangements because nobody is going to change their plans last minute. As much as the woman tried pleading her son's entitlement, I just ignored her acting way she acted. It's not that my son and daughter don't want to share a limo with anyone else but their respective significant others. It's more, they're all close and wanted the experience to the four of them because they'll be going off to different colleges and want to make the best memories together that they can together, and they did make prom memories with their other friends. As for the former teammate, I heard he got a ride by other means. Update. To address a few things, my son, daughter, and their respective significant others planned to go as a double date long in advance, so that was how I was able to work with my husband and the other parents to book their private ride long in advance, so it wasn't a matter of did the other senior's mom not getting to split the cost. Nor was it about the other senior not asking if it could be a triple date, it was just a preference made in advance. The next one is an entitled parent story. So, given that I had my mom take me to one of my therapy sessions, and also given that she had to talk with the therapist, even though the one I've been seeing is going out of business and I've decided to do over the phone sessions. But given that I talked to the therapist alongside my mom and talked about the problems he has, but my interprets it as getting better since I think she didn't want me telling the truth about how extremely hypocritical, narcissistic, and perfect he acts, is that she doesn't see and says that they're trying to teach me something. Well, maybe they could do that if they used more opened communication instead of raising their voice or telling me to pick up the pace, and as well as saying that people at other jobs are going to tell me to move quickly as well, but I don't see that. Which, given that my dad wants to interact with people instead of sitting around the house doing nothing, and that he wants me to be in public, but yet I'm in public every other day, as well as giving me a job that literally has me be all alone or with family members picking up trash at construction sites where I can't interact with anyone else. But I still think that my mom didn't want to hear all of the things that I said while I was in therapy, especially with what happened last week with the generator. Given how that into an absolute crap show because of he acted today towards me as we came home from an auction. He then gets mad at me for not doing something right as we were trying to put a generator on a shelf and it got stuck as I wasn't doing it right as he kept telling me to go to the end and I did, but he just gets angrier towards because I wasn't listening since I was at the side of it. He then grabs my hand and tries to put them in a certain position and I yell at him to not touch me, and he tells me that maybe I should put my hands in the right position and saying that I was going to get myself hurt, and he says that it was going to be on him. After I walk away while I was putting up a dolly, I repeated what he said earlier, and then I say, maybe you'll learn, and then on the drive home, my mom was showing me raccoon pictures of raccoon kits and how their legs looked weird, and I say that they look like spider monkeys, and I tell her they have long limbs. Then my dad says like a spider, and I tell him I'm not talking to you. He then gets angry at me. I say it's not up for discussion because it was over with, but my dad says that it was up for discussion all because I wasn't talking to him. To make matters worse, I say that I want open communication, and he says this is open communication, and I tell him yelling is not open communication. I tell him we had a great weekend, and now he had an attitude just because I did something wrong and then moved on from it because he constantly brings things after the minute they pass. I ask him, why do you continue to pressure me? He says I'm not pressuring you when he clearly was, and he gets out of the truck and tells me not to leave, but I did anyways. After I get out, my mom tells me to him that I'm sorry, and I say to her that I'll apologize when he acts right. I then get my stuff from Mom, and she asks if I'm going to apologize to him, and I ask her on why she kept pressuring me to apologize when I clearly said that I wasn't apologizing until he acted right. And all my mom could say was, he was just in a bad mood. I knew that she has seen him act like this and still makes an excuse about he's getting better at not getting angry at me when mess up, especially since they escalate things and result in drastic measures if I even mess up. I feel like every chance I give, he immediately ruins it, and it's the same excuse of getting better, and yet I have not seen any improvement on that. I mean, other than what happened a few days ago, I kinda yelled at him for what I had said since I had walked. Given how I said that I absolutely refuse to ride a scooter, one of these electric scooters that he has. Given that my car is still out and I had to walk to Walmart and then walked all the way to my house and basically had to request a ride from my sister, and then when I got home, apparently my dad was nagging me about something, which was the scooter, and I had said to him, if people were to really ride scooters, they would have been born with wheels on their feet, and realizing that my comment sounded stupid, and he said, so they wouldn't be able to drive cars, and then I immediately take back what I said, and he says, so you're gonna ride the scooter? And I'm like, no, and he says, why don't you want to ride the scooter? Are you just going to walk everywhere? I say, until I get my car back, and he says to me that the gas prices are getting outrageous, and I yell at him that I don't care about the gas prices. Which, given that this came from an accident on the scooter that I don't want to talk about that involved me wrecking it. It didn't damage the scooter or anything, but it did hurt me. And, well, apparently he can't see past my aversion to bike, in which I also ask him if they have a 3-wheeled scooter or a 4-wheeled scooter, because, well, he kept pressuring me about this, and I kept saying, like, I care about the scooters. And then immediately, instead of letting it go, he just keeps pressuring me and pressuring me. And I absolutely refuse to ride the scooter, but yet he keeps wanting me back on it. I mean, I don't care if it's hard, I'm not getting back on that scooter. The more he tries to convince me, the more I'm gonna push back. I mean, because apparently he can't see my aversions against bikes because I was never properly taught how to ride one because the last time I really ever rode a bike, I was 11. No matter what, I am not getting back on that bike. No matter how hard he tries to push me back on it, I'm just gonna keep telling him no. And if he says something again, it's that I'm just gonna tell him like I care. Because I don't care about the stupid scooters. I don't care about the gas prices. I don't care about this stupid war going on in Iran right now. I want my car back, and I want it back right ducking now. You know, as an autistic 22-year-old adult, I can make my own decisions. I don't need someone forcing me to get back on a scooter just because of an accident that happened. And I don't care if it's hard. You know, if I was properly taught how to ride a bike when I was 11, none of this crap would have happened. I should have never agreed to riding that stupid scooter in the first place. Which, not to mention that apparently he says that a scooter having 4 wheels or having 3 wheels, he says that it's not really a scooter. Oh my gosh, who cares? I mean, yeah, who cares if it's not a scooter? I mean, a car has 4 wheels and it's not a scooter. A truck has 4 wheels and it's not a scooter. A skateboard has 4 wheels and it's not a scooter. I mean, I can think of 5 things that I could learn in less than a month than ride a scooter. Number 1, diorama building. Number 2, soldering. Number 3, modeling. Number 4, learning how to snowboard. Number 5, learning how to ride a skateboard. All of those things would be much better if you could learn them in a year rather than me riding an electric scooter. Well, even if I try to talk normally to them or just respond with a simple okay or anything like that, apparently they think it's me having an attitude, but yet they agree with it because they think that I keep getting away with it, when yet I'm not trying to get away with anything, nor do I claim that I can't do everything, which is another outlandish excuse that I've heard them make. Anyway, thank you for watching.